Descending the grand staircase of the club, which was as heated by stoves as a greenhouse, Baron de Mordian had not fastened his fur coat. This was likely why, the moment the heavy entrance doors slammed shut behind him, he was seized by a piercing chill, a sudden and agonizing chill that cast a gloom over him, as if from some unexpected sorrow. To make matters worse, the Baron had lost at cards that evening, and his stomach, which had been troubling him of late, no longer permitted him to indulge in revelry to the full. He was about to head home, but suddenly he vividly pictured his vast, empty apartment, the footman dozing in the hall, the dressing room where warm water for his evening ablution bubbled quietly on a spirit lamp, and the wide, old-fashioned bed, as solemn as a funeral bier. And this image pierced his soul with an icy cold, even more unbearable than the frost outside. For several years now, he had been burdened by a wearisome heaviness of solitude, the very kind that so often oppresses aging bachelors. There was a time when he had been strong, vigorous, and cheerful, devoting his days to sport and his nights to carousing. Now, however, he had grown heavy and had almost completely lost his taste for pleasure. Walks tired him, suppers, and even luncheons brought on malaise, and women irritated him as much as they had once attracted him. The dreary monotony of his evenings, the same companions met within the walls of the very same club, the same gambling with its fluctuating luck, the same conversations about the same things, the same witticisms from the same lips, jokes on worn-out topics, gossip about the same ladies. All this had become so odious to him that at times he seriously contemplated suicide. This measured and empty life, so vulgar, facile, and yet so exhausting, had become intolerable. He felt a vague yearning for something quiet, peaceful, and cozy. Naturally, he did not entertain the thought of marriage, for he feared plunging into an abyss of boredom, into conjugal slavery, into the insufferable cohabitation of two people who had studied each other over long years to the point where every word is anticipated and every gesture expected in advance. People whose every thought, desire, and opinion had long ceased to be a mystery. He believed a woman was pleasant to deal with only so long as one knew her little, so long as there was some secret in the unknown about her, so long as she remained somewhat enigmatic and exciting. In short, he needed a family that, in essence, would not be his family, and where he could spend only a portion of his time. And with new force, the memory of his son stirred within him. For a full year, the Baron had thought of him incessantly, feeling an impatient, ever-growing desire to see the young man and make his acquaintance. This son had been born in the days of his youth, under dramatic and touching circumstances. The infant had been sent to the south and had grown up somewhere near Marseille, never learning his father's name. The father had at first paid a wet nurse monthly, then for his schooling at a college, later covered his expenses during holidays, and finally had provided him with a capital for a suitable marriage. The intermediary had been a tight-lipped notary who had never once let anything slip. The Baron knew only that his son lived somewhere in the vicinity of Marseille, was reputed to be an intelligent and educated man, had married the daughter of an architect-contractor, and become his successor. It was also said that he earned a rather decent living. Why not visit this unknown son, without revealing himself, in order first to look him over and ascertain whether one might find a quiet refuge in this family, should the need arise? After all, in his time, he had been generous, had provided a substantial allowance, which had been accepted with gratitude. Consequently, he could be sure he would not encounter excessive pride. This thought, This desire to travel south, which grew stronger with each passing day, haunted him like an obsession. The Baron was overcome by an uncharacteristic tenderness at the thought of a cozy, sun-drenched little house on the seashore, where he would find a young, pretty daughter-in-law, where grandchildren would rush to throw their arms around his neck, where he would see his son, a living reminder of a charming and fleeting love affair from years long past. His only regret was that he had already given so much money and the young man was not in need. This deprived Mordian of the opportunity to play the part of a benefactor. He walked on, pondering all this, his head buried in his fur collar, and suddenly his decision was finally made. A hackney carriage was passing by. He hailed the driver, ordered him to go home, and when a sleepy valet opened the door for him, said, "Louis, tomorrow evening we depart for Marseille. We shall stay there, perhaps, a fortnight. Prepare everything that will be required." The train raced along the sandy banks of the Rhone, past yellow fields and cheerful villages, crossing the vast plain enclosed in the distance by the bare slopes of the mountains. Baron de Mordian, having spent the night in the sleeping car, gazed sadly at his reflection in the small mirror of his dressing case the next morning. In the merciless light of the south, wrinkles he had never noticed before had become apparent, signs of decrepitude that remained invisible in the half-light of Parisian apartments. Studying the crow's feet at his eyes, the puffy eyelids, the receding hair at his temples and forehead, he thought, "Damn it all, I'm not just worn out. I've grown downright old." And within him, the yearning for a cozy repose strengthened, accompanied by a vague, first-time desire to hold his own grandchildren on his knee. Having hired a carriage in Marseille, he arrived around 1 in the afternoon at one of those southern country houses that gleam so dazzlingly white at the end of plane tree alleys that it hurts the eyes and makes one instinctively squint. Walking up the alley, he smiled and reflected, "Well, it's rather charming here, damn it all." Suddenly, a little boy of 5 or 6 darted out from behind some bushes and froze by the path, staring at the unfamiliar gentleman with wide, round eyes. Mordian approached. "Hello there, little one." The boy did not answer. The Baron then bent down, lifted him up to kiss him, but immediately choked on the sharp odor of garlic with which the child seemed thoroughly impregnated, and hastily set him back down on the ground, muttering, "Ah, this must be the gardener's son." And he continued on towards the house. Right in front of the door, laundry was drying on a line. Shirts, napkins, rags, aprons, and sheets, while garlands of socks, hung in rows on several lines, covered the entire window, exactly like an exhibition of sausages in a charcuterie shop window. The Baron called out. A servant girl appeared, a typical southern maid, untidy and disheveled. Strands of hair fell across her face. Her skirt, darkened by a multitude of stains, still retained patches of its former garish brightness, reminiscent of a village fair and gaudy carnival costumes. The Baron inquired, "Is Monsieur Duchoux at home?" In his time, as a jest, the mocking rake Mordian had given his son this surname to make it clear to everyone that the infant was found in the cabbage patch. The surname Duchoux, translates from French as "of the cabbage." The servant girl repeated, "Who is it you're asking for, monsieur?" Asterisk the servant, a native of the south of France, pronounces the final consonant accent, which is uncharacteristic of the north of the country. "Yes, he's in the drawing-room, working on his plans. Please inform him that a Monsieur Merlin wishes to see him." She repeated with surprise, "Well, what are you waiting for? Come in, since you wish to see him." And she called out, "Monsieur Duchoux, you have a visitor." The Baron entered, and in the large room, dimmed by the half-closed shutters. He could barely make out the slovenly furnishings and unkempt people. In front of a table littered with all sorts of things, a short, bald man was drawing something on a large sheet. He interrupted his work and stepped forward. His open waistcoat, unbuttoned trousers, and rolled-up shirt sleeves spoke eloquently of the heat, while his dirty shoes indicated that it had rained recently. He asked in a thick southern accent, "To whom do I have the pleasure?" "Merlin, I should like to consult you about a plot of land for construction." "Ah, excellent." And Duchoux turned to his wife, who was knitting something in the semi-darkness. "Clear a chair, Josephine." Mordian made out a young woman, already faded, as often happens with provincial women by the age of 25, due to a lack of care, attention to herself, meticulous hygiene, and all those little artifices of the feminine toilette that preserve freshness and prolong charm until the age of 50. A kerchief was draped over her shoulders. Her hair, beautiful, thick, dark, was gathered anyhow. With hands coarsened like a servant's, she cleared from the seat a child's dress, a knife, a piece of string, an empty flower pot, and a dirty plate, then pushed the chair toward the guest. He sat down and immediately noticed that on Duchoux's work table, besides books and drafts, lay 2 fresh heads of lettuce, a bowl, a hairbrush, a napkin, a revolver, and several unwashed cups. The architect caught his glance and said with a smile, "Forgive me, the drawing-room is not quite in order. It's all because of the children." He drew up a chair to converse with his client. "So, you're looking for a plot in the vicinity of Marseille?" From him, too, emanated a garlicky aura, as if he were steeped in it, much as flowers exude fragrance. Mordian asked, "Was it your little boy playing under the plane trees?" "Yes, the second one most likely." "You have 2. 3, sir, one after the other." And Duchoux seemed to swell with pride. The Baron thought, "If they all smell like that, their bedroom must be a veritable hothouse of garlic." He continued, "Yes, I should like to acquire a good plot by the sea, in a secluded spot." Duchoux launched into explanations. He could offer 10, 20, 50, 100, and even more suitable plots for every taste and purse. His speech flowed in a continuous stream, and he smiled smugly, rolling his round, bald head. And Mordian recalled a small, fair-haired woman, fragile, with a touch of sadness, who had said so tenderly, "My beloved," that at the mere memory, his blood rushed to his heart. She had loved him passionately, madly, for 3 months, and then, having become pregnant during her husband's absence. He was a colonial governor. She had left the city in panic and despair and hidden away until the birth. Mordian had taken the child from her that very evening, and they had never seen each other again. She had died of consumption 3 years later, there in the colony, whither she had followed her husband. And now before him stood their son, speaking in a harsh voice, clipping his syllables. "Such a plot, sir, is a rare opportunity." And Mordian heard another voice, light as a breath, whispering, "My beloved, we shall never part." And, recalling that tender, deep, devoted gaze, he saw before him the round, also blue, but vacant eyes of this absurd little man, who was none the less somewhat like his mother. Yes, he resembled her more strongly with each passing minute. He was like her in his intonations, his gestures, his whole bearing, as an ape resembles a human. For he was her son, she had passed on to him a multitude of her traits in a distorted form, irritating, unbearable, indisputable. The Baron suffered, haunted by this terrible, growing resemblance, oppressive, maddening, torturous as a nightmare, like the pangs of conscience. He muttered, "When can we view this plot?" "Tomorrow, if it suits you." "Let us say tomorrow." "At what time?" "At 1 o'clock." "Very well." The boy from the alley appeared in the doorway and shouted, "Papa!" No one answered him. Mordian rose, feeling a tremble in his legs and a desire to flee without a backward glance. The exclamation, "Papa!" struck him like a bullet, for he himself might have heard that piercing, garlic-tainted southern papa. Oh, how tenderly she had been perfumed, his companion of bygone days. Duchoux saw him out. "Is this house your own?" asked the Baron. "Yes, sir, I acquired it recently, and I am proud of it. For I am a foundling, sir, and do not hide it. On the contrary, I am proud. I am indebted to no one. I have achieved everything myself by my own labor." The little boy, standing on the threshold, was still shouting from afar, "Papa!" Trembling as if with fever, seized with horror, Mordian fled as if from a mortal danger. "Any moment now he will guess, he will recognize me," thought the Baron. "He will seize me in his arms, cry 'Papa' to me, and plant a garlicky kiss on my cheek. Until tomorrow, sir. Until tomorrow at 1. The carriage rolled along the white road. "Coachman, to the station." And the Baron heard two voices, one distant and tender, faint and sad, the voice of the deceased whispering, "My beloved," and the other, loud, drawling, repulsive, shouting, "Papa," as one shouts, "Stop, thief," when a robber is fleeing down the street. The next evening, at the entrance to the club, the Comte de Trilly asked him, "You haven't been seen for the last 3 days. Have you been ill?" "Yes, I was somewhat unwell. I am troubled by migraines from time to time."